"Your nephew was very kind, he helped me." That sentence kept replaying in my head as I sat quietly in the living room, staring at the soft glow of the lamp. Life has a strange way of introducing people into our paths when we least expect it. And for me, that moment came when everything in my personal life felt heavy, uncertain, and even a little lonely. My name is Laura. I had always been the type of woman who tried to handle things on her own, never wanting to impose my burdens on others. But sometimes, when the weight grows too much, it only takes one unexpected act of kindness to remind you that you don't have to carry everything alone. I had moved to a small town in Ohio after my marriage to Mark. He was a good man, hard-working and determined, but often away for business. His sister, Julia, lived only a few miles away with her husband and their teenage son, Daniel. From the very first day I met Daniel, I knew he was different from most young men his age. While others were buried in their phones or had little time to spare for adults, Daniel always had a polite smile, an eagerness to help, and a patience that was rare to find. At first, I brushed it off as just good upbringing, but soon, I realized it was simply who he was at his core. The first time he helped me was when Mark had left for a 2-week trip. Our old washing machine had suddenly stopped working mid-cycle, flooding the laundry room with water. I stood there helpless, towels spread across the floor, wondering how I would manage the mess. Julia must have mentioned it to Daniel, because the next afternoon, he showed up at my door with a small toolbox in hand and an expression of determination on his face. "Aunt Laura," he said warmly, "Mom told me about the washing machine. Can I take a look?" I smiled, though I felt embarrassed. "Daniel, you don't have to. I was going to call someone to fix it." He shook his head. "You don't need to waste money on a repair guy if it's something simple. Let me at least try." I stepped aside and watched him kneel by the machine, carefully examining the hoses, turning knobs, and checking the back panel. His calm focus amazed me. Most boys his age would have dismissed it as boring, but Daniel took it seriously. Within an hour, he had unclogged the drain and reattached a hose that had come loose. The washing machine rumbled back to life, and I was so relieved I almost hugged him. "Daniel, I don't know how to thank you," I said, genuinely touched. He grinned, wiping his hands on a rag. "Just promise me you won't try fixing machines by yourself. That's what you've got me for." That was the beginning of a string of small but meaningful moments where Daniel stepped in and reminded me of the power of kindness. He would mow my lawn when Mark was away, help me carry groceries inside, or simply stop by to ask if I needed anything. Each time, I felt my heart warm a little more. In a world where people were often too busy with their own lives, this young man made me feel seen, cared for, and respected. There was one particular afternoon that I'll never forget. A storm had rolled through town, tearing branches off trees and leaving debris scattered across yards. My backyard fence had been damaged, leaning dangerously close to collapsing. I stood outside in the drizzle, staring at it, feeling overwhelmed. That's when Daniel appeared, rain jacket zipped, hammer in hand, as though he knew I needed him even before I asked. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said firmly but gently. "Go inside. I'll fix this." I protested at first, but he was insistent. I ended up making us both hot cocoa while he worked outside in the rain. Watching him from the window, I was struck by how rare his sense of responsibility was for someone so young. He wasn't doing it for praise or for any reward. He was simply doing it because it was the right thing. That, more than anything, touched me. When he finally came inside, soaked and smiling, I handed him the cocoa and said, "Daniel, you're going to make an incredible man someday. Your parents must be so proud of you." He looked down, almost shy, and said quietly, "It just makes me happy to help. You've always been kind to me, Aunt Laura. I guess I just want to return it." That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about how small acts of kindness create ripples in our lives. Daniel had probably thought little of his gestures, but to me they were everything. They reminded me that even when I felt alone with Mark gone so often, I wasn't truly alone. The months rolled by and our bond grew stronger. He would stop by after school to check if I needed anything fixed. Sometimes he would just sit with me on the porch, chatting about his future dreams. He wanted to study engineering, and it made perfect sense. His mind was sharp, his hands skilled, and his patience endless. One evening he told me, "Aunt Laura, I think people forget how much little things matter. You don't need to do something huge to make a difference. Sometimes just being there for someone is enough." I smiled, realizing how wise he was beyond his years. "You're right, Daniel. You've already made such a difference for me." His kindness not only helped me with practical problems, but also with emotional ones. There were days when I felt distant from Mark, frustrated by his long absences and the way we seemed to drift apart. Talking to Daniel, even about ordinary things, gave me comfort. He had this way of listening, really listening, that made me feel valued. One summer afternoon, I twisted my ankle while carrying boxes up from the basement. The pain was sharp, and I nearly fell. When Daniel heard about it, he rushed over without hesitation. He brought bandages, helped me sit down, and even made me tea. The tenderness with which he cared for me brought tears to my eyes. "Don't cry," he said softly. "I'll always be around if you need me." It wasn't just the physical help he gave me, but the emotional reassurance. In that moment, I realized how much his presence meant in my life. I began to see him not just as my nephew by marriage, but as a true friend. Over time, his kindness inspired me to give more, too. I started volunteering at the local community center, remembering how Daniel had once told me that little acts matter. I wanted to be that person for someone else, the way he had been for me. And in that way, his kindness became a chain reaction, spreading beyond just the two of us. Years later, when Daniel graduated high school, I sat in the audience beaming with pride. As his name was called, I clapped until my hands hurt. When he walked across the stage in his cap and gown, I remembered every small act of kindness, every thoughtful word, every moment he had been there when I needed him. After the ceremony, he came up to me and hugged me tightly. "Thanks for always believing in me, Aunt Laura," he said. I smiled through happy tears. "No, Daniel. Thank you. You taught me that kindness doesn't just help, it heals." And it was true. His kindness had healed parts of me I didn't even realize were broken. It had reminded me that family isn't just about blood ties, but about the love and support we give each other. Even now, whenever I face challenges or moments of doubt, I think back to that simple phrase. "Your nephew was very kind, he helped me." And I realize that sometimes the most profound changes in our lives come not from grand gestures, but from the quiet, consistent kindness of someone who simply chooses to care.